Tristan Connelly heading out, Unified MMA, taking on UFC veteran Shane Campbell. Second fight in a matter of just, kind of weeks, I guess. How does it feel getting back in there as soon as you are and knowing that you're in there against such a tough test?
It's awesome. It's actually my third fight. It'll be 3 fights in 10 weeks total after this. And, I was lucky enough to get out of the first 2 with barely getting hit, so no injuries, no damage, just be able to right back into camp. And from the second Shane was released from the UFC, this is the fight I wanted. And the second I won that belt, but like 2 days later, Sonny called me up saying, "Hey, I want you to defend against Shane," and I didn't even hesitate, said yes right away. So super pumped.
So that last fight, where you won the belt, going in there, sort of enemy territory kind of thing, a very tough fight. Probably the underdog going into it. Do you like being that underdog guy going into a fight? Because this one, I'm sure you're the underdog as well.
Of course, yeah. I've always been the underdog going into every fight. Like if you ever look up where people like on Tapology where people vote, I'm always the underdog, and more often than not I end up winning. So I look to make it 5 straight, underdog for the 5th time in a row, and I plan on coming out on top and taking all the fire away from Shane and moving on up.
For sure, and you're on a bit of a tear, like you said, 5 in a row. People may look at your record and think Tristan Connelly, not the greatest fighters out there by the looks of the record, but you've proven in the last 5 fights that no one can overlook you. What's changed over the course of those last 5 fights?
Well, a big thing for me was early on in my career, I didn't have any amateur fights. I never said no to any fights, and my losses, they were close fights. They were battles against guys with more experience than me, and I made them fights, but I had holes in my game that I didn't learn in my amateur career that obviously didn't happen. So I feel like the last couple of years I've really been complete as a fighter, and the last 4 guys I've beat they all win records. Last 5 guys I beat, all winning records. I've finished every single one of my opponents that I've beat, and I'm looking to do it again. Like I say, I'm always the underdog. I'd feel weird if I wasn't. So it's always a better feeling. If you're supposed to win and you win, it's not a big deal. But when everyone's overlooking you and you're coming on top, that's that real feeling of satisfaction, and I can't wait to feel it again.
For sure. So you say that the amateur thing could have played a part in those first few fights.
Yeah.
What do you owe these fights to, though? These now, you're saying you've grown as a fighter. What exactly? I'm sure you can't pinpoint it to the exact method of what has changed, but something in you has changed.
Hard work and sacrifice, man. I moved over here to Vancouver a few years ago, and just my way of life, my whole life revolves around this now. This is all I do. I teach martial arts for work, and I train. So that's all I do. I eat, sleep, and breathe this. So really not having to work another job and having my focus all over the place. And just, I needed that change in scenery, I think. Is really no distractions. All I have over here is training and fighting, and I love it, and I'm not looking back.
So would you say that, looking back a little bit, would you say that growing as a fighter, that these last 4 fights weren't necessarily as tough as your early fights then? You would say some of those earlier fights were harder opponents despite them not having winning records, maybe?
Yeah, definitely. Well, some of my opponents, I fought guys, I fought Miles Marola again, and I think I had like 5 fights, and I fought him, he had like 20. I fought my second fight was in Japan against a guy with over 30 fights. They both had winning records, and I went to decision with both of those guys. I had good 3-round wars with them both. So, it was never that I was getting dominated by guys that had losing records. Most of them all had winning records, and I put up a good fight. It was just I started off doing jiu-jitsu, and that's what I went into fights with. Not really any striking, not really any wrestling, and I played off my back, and I wasn't taking damage, but I wasn't winning the fight. So that's a big thing that I learned early on, and now it's paying dividends.
So you head out to Alberta, like we said, take on Shane. What do you look at Shane as an opponent? You know who he is. You've seen his fights. You know he's a UFC vet. He's got that big kickboxing background. What do you see in him that turns the fire up in you?
Well, there's lots, man. He's good everywhere. I've been a Shane fan from before he's in the UFC, and was watching every one of his fights. I would tune into Fight Pass every time he fought. He's super slick. He's good everywhere. He's got no big holes in his game that I see. but that's exactly what I want, right? I'm not in this to beat up easy guys. I can do that anywhere, right? Like this is about testing myself, and Shane's been there fighting at the highest level, and I think I'm ready to fight at that tier of fighting, and the only way to do it is to test myself, and we're gonna find out here June 9th. I think I'm ready, so when we step in the cage, that'll be the true test.
Being that Shane's trained in BC, have you ever had a chance to train with him?
No, I haven't. There's been talks about going up there and training Toshido when he was there, but it just never ended up happening, and probably a good thing, because we probably wouldn't have had a fight if that didn't happen, and it's a fight I really want, I'm really looking forward to, so yeah, it hasn't happened.
You said, you know, this is your however many fight in the past 10 weeks,
yeah,
kind of thing. How many more do you expect to have in 2017? I mean,
depends how this one goes. You know, I already have offers for other fights, not too distant future, but you know, hopefully I beat Shane. I'm defending my belt against a UFC vet in Edmonton. UFC's coming to Edmonton, so with any luck, Dana White will get me on the card there, and I'll fight in Edmonton. Barring that, then I'll be looking to get right back in there and fight again and keep climbing up and try to get on the next UFC after that in Canada.
For sure, and we were speaking prior to this interview, and you said, you know, you showed me that your name keeps getting called out non-stop. It's like, what the hell's going on? Early in your career, I mean, I'm sure it was probably tough to find fights. A lot of guys in BC have a hell of a time finding fights, especially guys at your level. What do you think it is that guys are calling you out? Why is this happening? I mean, it's not just here in BC, which is the good thing. You're getting called out all over Canada. Almost seems like you're not a Canadian anymore.
I know, it's amazing. I want to look at my passport and make sure I'm still born here, because all my friends are having trouble. I think the thing is this combination of, you know, I've had enough fights that, you know, those upper tier guys, like, there's something for them if they beat me. So, and they look at my record, oh, he's got 5 losses. They're not really looking too deep into it, that I look like a winnable fight with also something to gain from beating me. And I think that's why people keep calling me out, but they keep ending up getting the short straw in the equation, so they keep doing it all they want.
For sure. Taking over this gym here, you know, you're running Checkmat Vancouver now, teaching classes, as you said. How much does that play a part in your daily training? Because a lot of guys say, you know, you learn a lot more when you're actually in there and you're teaching classes and whatnot. Does it take away from your own training as well, or do you find that it's upped your game a little bit?
Well, it goes both ways a bit. I mean, obviously sometimes you tire yourself out a bit all day teaching and training, but at the same time I get to reinforce the good habits when I'm teaching. That's the thing that teaching really teaches you, is it makes you look at what you actually know, because people ask questions and you go, you know what, I don't actually necessarily know that, and you can either cop out and make something up, or you can find out the real answer and the real response and fill those holes in your game. At the same time as, you know, you're putting reps in when you're teaching, and you're going through a drill with the class a lot of times, so you get to do a lot of that slower learning where it's just not all grinding every day. At the same time as some days you train 3 times in a day, it's just exhausting. You have to get in there and teach them stuff. But you know, I mean, as far as doing a hell of a lot more for my game than any other job would be doing, so I'll keep doing it.
For sure. June 9th, Shane Campbell. How do you see the fight playing out?
You know, I see the first couple of rounds being tough. I see Shane coming out there and really putting in some good solid work in the first couple of rounds, but my conditioning's top notch. I feel like I'm gonna get in there, I'm gonna weather an early storm, and I'm just gonna keep grinding on him, and he's gonna end up wilting, and I'm gonna come out with the win in round 4 and 5.
Your teammate, training partner, Brendan Kornberger, also on this card defending his strap. How do you see his fight playing out?
Oh man, Brendan, yeah, he's just like me. He just doesn't stop. He's a workhorse, does not get tired, just keeps going. So, you know, Miles is a really tough guy. I've trained with him too. I know him. He's an awesome fighter. I think that Brendan's just the same kind of thing. Round 4 and 5 is just that conditioning is going to be the playing factor there. Like, I think they're going to have a really tough back and forth fight, and then round 4 and 5, I think Brendan's just going to put a pace that is just hard to match, and he's going to come out on top.
Good luck, man.